Thank you. Okay. So just like in Joshua, where it describes where we are right now, the days in between unleavened bread and first fruits. Where is that, Christina? Five?
Yes,
Five?
Jess is
yes.
here, Linda.
Sorry,
Oh,
guys, that
great.
was
Yes.
slow.
Jess, this is
You're
great.
talking about Joshua 5.
Joshua 5.
Yes. So Joshua 5:11 specifically. And they did, okay, so I'm going to read this how I see it, having studied the word, the translated word self-same into ģeṣem, which means um appointed time. So I'm echoing, I think, in Ray's computer. Do you mind muting yourself, Ray?
I got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover unleavened cakes, period. And n new corn in the appointed time of first fruits. So Joshua 5:11a is talking about old corn during the Passover, and 5:11b is talking about new corn during first fruits. Okay, so that word ģeṣem there that's translated into self same day in my Bible, you might have something else. I believe it's so what I'm saying is I think a lot of people, because it says self same day, that translation is very confusing, and people think that they were eating new corn and old corn on the same day as the Passover, and that's not true. That cannot be true because there's instructions that we have to follow in order to eat the new fruit of the land, and it happens on 126. Okay. So, not until this morning did I recognize that when we're talking about the flood and when the flood began, so what is so interesting, I'm just realizing right this second, I'm comparing Joshua 5:11 to Genesis 7:11. Okay. So actually, that's where it starts. That's where we begin. Genesis 7:11 is in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were the fountains of the great deep broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. So that use of same day, that's what we think it means today. It's the same day, that day, the 17th day of the second month, the windows of heaven were opened up. And the rain was upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, in verse 13, we are going to see this word self same, which is ģeṣem. Okay. And this is the very first time it's used in scripture in our canon. Okay. And in this self same day, in the ģeṣem day, in the appointed time, Noah entered the ark with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the three wives of his sons with them into the ark. So, um, I believe that this appointed time is the second Passover. So in Genesis 7:13, it's not the same day that we were talking about of the 17th in verse 11. This is the appointed time of 2:14. That's how I understand this. Go ahead, Mitzi.
But just not to cause confusion, you're not saying Joshua kept the second
No,
Passover.
all I'm saying is it's the same word that means this
Appointed
word
time.
self same ģeṣem is connected to every single appointed time and some
Right.
additional dates, including 11:1, 10:10, and bringing in the lamb on 1:10. They're all appointed times. They're biblical, scriptural. It's specific.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just didn't want people being confused thinking that we're saying Joshua 5 was
Yeah.
the second Passover.
No, it
But
just
yeah,
means appointed time. Thank you for clarifying.
yeah. Okay. So because of Genesis 7:13, so we're saying on the very same day or this appointed time, which is the 14th day of the second month, is when Noah, Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the three wives of his son entered the ark. So that's what she's saying. That gives you a timestamp. Now, where is it? I know in Jubilees it says they entered in on the first day of the.
Yeah, so that's in Jubilees 5.
uh So we just want to explain all this. There is contradictory information in Jubilees. However, I think we have proven over and over and over that Jubilees, the timing cannot be trusted.
So it's 521 is where we start talking about Noah and the ark in Jubilees. Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just going to start in 21. And he commanded Noah to make him an ark that he might hide himself from the waters of the flood. And Noah made an ark in all respects as he commanded him we're crossing out that we don't agree with the Jubilee. And in the fifth week, in the fifth year, on the new moon of the first month, and so I don't think I have a problem with this so far. I do think I believe that Noah made the ark starting the new, well, I guess he wouldn't be starting to make an ark on New Year's Day, would he?
I don't think he did. I We'd have to relook at that and dig it out. I'm just saying, on every time Jubilee says on the new moon of X month, I put a big old fat question
Yeah.
mark beside it because we've proven too many to be incorrect. That's all I'm saying.
So earlier, Christina and we were discussing that we're kind of starting to think that when they mention new moon in Jubilees, that there might actually be a mention, it might be talking about a moon. We're not really sure. We're just trying to see if this makes sense in any way. But now, yeah, he wouldn't start making an arc on New
He
Year's.
would not do it on the first day of the first of the year, and that's because it's a
It's
heavy,
a
heavy
rest
job.
day.
Yeah.
It's
It's a
yeah,
rest day.
yeah.
But I guess what I was aiming at here is what we just said that they entered the ark on the 14th day of the second month. Verse 23 says, and he entered the sixth year thereof in the second month on the new moon of the second month. That's saying the first day, and I'm saying that is incorrect.
No way. It's the
Uh-uh.
14th.
Right.
Yes.
And then it says till the 16th. And I'm saying he wouldn't be loading it up on the 16th because that's a Shabbat. So I'm saying when Jubilees gives you numbers, just put a
Well,
question mark
so
there.
so I so I wouldn't have a problem with them staying there until a Shabbat, but I don't think that's but what it's trying to make us believe is that they went into the ark the first day of the second month and stayed in there till the 16th, and I don't think they did. The 14th to the 16th makes a lot more sense, and the 17th is when Yahusha
It was
closed it.
closed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I'm just saying it makes it sound like that they all entered the animals, the people, through till the 16th.
Yeah.
And then it says, and he entered, as if to say, to me, I read it like it's still going on the 16th, but I hear what
Gotcha.
you're saying.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
So, but we're saying it's clear from scripture, and because of that very same day or ģeṣem, he's trying to show us that they did go in on the daylight portion of the 14th.
Hmm.
So, and that's what we wanted to share with you guys. So, it is interesting so the Noah, the Lot, like we discussed last week, it does follow the second Passover time schedule. That the 14th probably something's going to happen. You need to remember the Sabbath and rest on the 16th. And then the 17th, Yah closes to safety, right? So, but I did want to say that I certainly believe it is definitely possible that something might happen this second Passover. But I also wanted to make sure everybody, if it doesn't, that doesn't mean that his calendar's wrong, scripture's wrong, all this stuff. He said in Matthew 24:22, he's going to cut those days short, and those days referring to the Great Tribulation, specifically as he laid out in Matthew 24, verse 21. So, as crazy as this sounds, if he would have done what we thought on the first Passover, scripture would have been broken because he didn't shorten the days. Now, I do think it looks like spring because of Song of Solomon chapter 2. It looks like second Passover because of what we've been discussing and how Yahushua over and over has been pointing to the days of Noah and the days of Lot. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not saying I'm not heavy watching right now and won't be, through the second Passover. But if nothing happens on the second Passover, I think he's shoving it out a whole year. So, not that the Great Tribulation, the 1290, I think happened. I think it was spiritual in heaven, so we wouldn't have seen it. I think 1260 actually happened. My point is, how could we really know who's running the joint when they lie about everything? Everything coming out in the news, you know, I think the bounds of the time of the Great Tribulation has been set and followed, but what Yah is doing is shoving back or making short the days of the severe trial.
And to add to that, it even says in there that um, even the elect uh, could be deceived. But if we're watching, if we're taking care to watch what is happening, we're not going to be deceived by all of the lies that are coming out in the media. And it is heavy right now. It is heavy. So I do believe that there have been some clues for us to see that things have changed. It's just that if you can see it or not. And there's things that I saw that make me believe that it already has started. It's just that Yah has decided to push it back. So I guess I'll just leave it there.
And I've kind of thought, sure, he could cut it short 1 month. I can see that. But when you consider scriptures like in Matthew 25, the parable of the virgins, it says, verse 5, but while the bridegroom was delayed, so obviously he's delayed. I believe that's the time we are in right now. They all slumbered and slept. So I'm thinking, really, in a month, are we all going to slumber and sleep? I think it tends to be like it's going to be longer than just a month. And I we didn't really discuss all this, but could it be Pentecost? That's still technically spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That's,
know,
I was just, okay. Before we elaborate on that, do you think it's important that we reconcile Jubilees 14 where it says the same day that Noah made his covenant.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, right. And I think also we should go over Genesis 17 as well, but maybe afterward.
Okay. Okay. If you look at chapter 14 of Jubilees, it's it's Yahuwah's covenant with Abraham. And we went over last week how we believe, well, actually we went over it, but weren't able to share the recording, but we do have a recording that we made yesterday, and we talk about how the order of Genesis has been rearranged. But the correct order of Abraham's covenant of the first Passover, the second Passover, until we get to the renewal of his covenant, which is the circumcision. That's interesting. We'll have to talk about that when we get back to this point that you were just talking about. Could it be that is still spring? Could it be the time of covenant renewal? And I think it could be. But okay, so in Jubilee, okay, so back to Jubilees 14:21, and I have to remind everybody that we believe that the covenant in Genesis 15 with Abraham when he walked between the pieces was done on the first day of unleavened bread, 115. Okay, so chapter 14, verse 20 in Jubilees says, "And on that day we made a covenant with Abram, according as we had covenanted with Noah in this month, and Abraham renewed the festival and ordinance for himself forever." So we found this morning in Genesis 6:18. This is talking about Noah here. What we believe we should be doing is dividing Genesis 6:18 into two parts, A and B. But with thee I will establish my covenant. He's talking about Noah. Okay, so I'll read it in context starting in 17. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee I establish my covenant, speaking to Noah, and I believe that this is also the first day of unleavened bread, 115. So this works that Abram covenanted with Yahuah on 115, and so did Noah. Now, the second part of this verse is, "And thou shalt come into the ark, thou, thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee," on 2:14. I don't know why. I don't know if they just weren't quite following. Noah has it. He's basically like the Lot of the story where he's able to take his sons and daughters that are willing to go with him and take this journey with him, and they do it.
And scripture says that Noah was righteous. It never said that about the wives, the sons, or the wives.
He's the covering for the rest of his
Yes,
house, like Lot.
yes.
Linda, what chapter and verse did you just read?
So I compared Jubilees 14:20 with Genesis 6:17 and 18. And so
Okay.
verse 18, you just gotta, it's A and B basically. And I just highlighted mine so I can remember A is 115, B is 214.
And the reason you just said, Linda, that I do believe Noah kept 115 in the first Passover, just like Abraham here. The difference, and I think Yah spells it out clear, the difference moving into the millennial reign is when he states, and I think it's Ezekiel 14:14,
Yep.
even if Noah, Job, and Daniel were there, they would come out with only their lives.
Yep.
Meaning, no more Noah, no more Lot, where they're bringing people with them that aren't in covenant with Yah. So I think that's the big difference between the days of Noah and the days of Lot, and that's why Yah makes that distinction.
Hmm.
This time you're not dragging people with you.
No, there's not
I
thousands
allowed
of
it.
years beyond this. It's millennial reign after this.
That's right. He's basically saying I allowed it then for my purposes, but no more because we're entering into my rest. I'm not going to deal with these people that refuse to obey me anymore or don't understand, fill in the blank. You know what I'm trying to
You've got
say.
to be on board.
Yes, every man will be judged for his own actions. You're not getting in coattails. Parents aren't covering anymore, except young children. Let me just say that. I'm just saying people of age have to walk in under their own merit. Those were clearly adult children, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so let's head into the possibility of covenant renewal, circumcision. Now it's circumcision of the heart, and like that's a great possibility.
Yeah, I don't really have any. I didn't. I
Should we
just
save this and talk about it maybe next
Yeah,
week?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the research to back it. I'm just saying I'm just trying to express my range of possibility is not only the second Passover this year, but Pentecost this year and Passover, of course, next year. So that's all I'm trying to say. Open it up for discussion or any other thoughts on that?
There are bunch of people that think that the tribulation is cut short to like a year and a half. So you wouldn't be off if they put it off a year or whatever.
Right.
It's
And a
out
year
there.
and a half, I kind of tossed around in my head maybe fall. But if you read Song of Solomon, chapter 2, I don't think the fall is on the table. Also, Matthew 24, it does need to be in the spring. Because
My
Song
point
of,
was just that, I'm not arguing that point. I was just saying that there
okay.
are people that think that the delay is over a year. So
Oh,
maybe it, you know what I mean? Like it's not out of the realm of possibilities that it is a year late.
Yeah,
yeah,
Kimberly's just saying we're not the only ones that have considered that
that think
possibility
that.
of
Right.
being cut short
Oh, I
that amount of
gotcha.
time.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah, and it is as frustrating as it is maybe in a test. He's testing us. Are you going to walk away? What are you going to do? But it's also merciful. I mean, he shortened the amount of, I'll just put it bluntly, hell the world has to go through. Not that some parts aren't going through it. I don't want to minimize that at all. There is great suffering going on, but to the degree of the entire earth, right? That he is very clear the suffering will be every nation, every tribe, every tongue. So he is shortening not how bad it's gonna get, but at least the how
you
long it will last.
says for the Alexians. It's cutting
for the
everything.
elect.
Yeah. The elect, yes. Yeah.
Can I offer a differing view? This is just how I see it. I don't know that cut short references the beginning. I view it as more of at the end, right? Especially when he says, if it were not for it to be cut short, right, all mankind would essentially be killed. So that's what I'm struggling with, is I see it more as a merciful thing at the end, not necessarily in the beginning. So I'm just being completely honest. I'm trying to make sense of that in my own mind.
Well, I guess my answer to that is, and so the Jubilee year and on the priestly order, 2028 through 2029 is the last Jubilee in the sixth day. So if you go all over scripture, that foot has to hit on to me, the end point is fixed because of the Day of Atonement, because of the end of the Jubilee, because, and we just talked about it in Obadiah, that the day of Yah, right? So that last day of Yah or the day of Yah's wrath is referenced all over scripture as being that time. So because in my mind that is immovable, because if that moves, then Yah scripture can be broken. And that's why I just, anybody else got
Yeah,
any?
we went over that with Linda, and I get the logic.
Yeah,
I'm struggling myself with trying to, just visualize it being cut short from the beginning. So, but yeah, it's just something I have to continue to pray about.
yeah.
Um, this could be like totally wrong, but something Kurt and I talked about was so, I mean, to me, I could be wrong, but the beginning seems set because of the numbers 1290, 1260, the things that happen on 1260. The end also seems very set. But we talked about potentially like if the tribulation itself was cut short, those 2.5 years, and then the day of Yahuah was lengthened. Or, so the whole thing is still 42 months. The whole thing is still 1260 days, but the pieces, you know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that was just the
So
thought we had.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, Bailey. So what are you saying, like instead of the full 42 months being shortened, you're saying it's the 42 months is moved around? Is that I just want to understand.
So not moved around exactly, but like, okay, so in Matthew 24, it goes through the Great Tribulation, and then right after it says those days will be shortened, then it starts talking about the day of the eternal, which is the last year, is how I've always seen it, I guess. But we're saying like potentially the Great Tribulation, those first 2.5 years could be shortened, and then the day of the eternal, which I've always thought is a year, would be slightly longer than a year. But it would
I
still the
don't.
whole.
So Yah stays within his Jubilee year there. I just disagree with that part. Um,
Yeah, I mean we could be wrong. It was just something that we had talked about. Because I just don't see how scripture wouldn't be broken if it wasn't 42 months, if it wasn't 1260 days, if the beast didn't reign for those.
but how do we know he's not? So the beast system
It's
is
hidden. They have been hiding
it
so
is
much through
AI.
deception. Yes,
Yeah.
they did talk about that. They have already given over control to the AI.
Here.
So,
Okay, well, boom,
but
boom.
the thing is,
Okay. I'll
it's
move it.
not
I'll
in your
take it there.
face.
Yeah.
So, just like other things aren't in our face, to be able to see what's going on. And this is where the deception comes through. If the elect was not aware of what was happening in the background, they too would be deceived. And I do believe that if um, that if we're able to see through it, we will already know that it has begun. It's just that Yah has held off on the violence and the tribulation within it.